And for her, I had a very specific idea. There is an Incan goddess, Incan divinity called Mama Kila. She is she's the moon, the sister of the sun, and she is regarded as the protector of women. She's also like the goddess of the menstruation, but she's the protector of women. And again, the same way that I'm going through religion, and the same way that I'm saying, like, okay, not all, we don't have just one way of looking at things. Like, I'm incorporating, these Incan mythologies as well. Like, yes, I'm going to give you the Virgin, but I'm also going to give you Incan deities. So to me, this was, again, I wanted to make this picture. It was really important to me because there is a lot of violence against women in my country, like a lot. Like, we're one of the countries with the most violence against women in the whole of Latin America, which is a lot to say because it's still a very macho continent. And what I was telling you before, I did want to comment on this, but I didn't want to do it either in a crass way or in a very, I don't know, like I wanted to talk about it, but in a more subtle way. So what I was imagining with her was, to me, this is my way of saying, in Bolivia, we have to defend ourselves. The law is not helping us. The government is not helping us. Society is really not helping us. So justice, protection, we have to take it upon ourselves. Like, it is our responsibility at the end of the day. This is the first. This is the image. Madre has actually become a book, and this is the first image. And simply, I think it's a good place to start because, of course, like, it's a cave, and the cave can be representative, can be a metaphor for a womb. But to me, it also leads me back to the super famous cave that we all know, which is Plato's cave. And where we have this idea, this idea of mythology begins, like what is real, what is not. But unlike Plato, I don't believe that, as I was telling you before, that's why mythology is part of the work that I do, because I believe that everything is a story. This that I'm telling is also going to be a story. So this is my way of opening up and saying, okay, I'm gonna take the artifice into my work. But so that's where we start. And then I think that this is one of the most representative images, because here we have this amazing woman, and maybe I'm gonna tell you the story of some of them, maybe not of all of them. But for example, this is Maria Elena. We call her Negrita. That's her nickname. She's the dance. She goes to dance lessons with my mom. That's where we met her. One day, this is so cute, but I'm gonna tell it. My mom doesn't like it. She's like, Marisol, please be a serious person. Don't tell people that your mom helped you. And I'm like, Mom, I hope you understand that it's a luxury. Like, I want to brag about it. My mom came back home, and she had taken pictures on her cell phone of Negrita, like mug shots from the front, from the side, and holding her hair, because she said to me, oh my God, Negrita, how didn't I thought about it before? She's so beautiful. She has this long hair. And I was trying to reproduce some images that I saw in a museum in Bolivia, where you have cholitas. Cholitas are from indigenous descent in Bolivia. You probably have seen them by now. They're quite popular at the moment. But I had seen these old studio pictures of cholitas with unbraided hair. And I thought it was beautiful and very unusual. So I wanted to make a a portrait of a very long-haired woman with like her braids and undone. And the amazing thing is that sometimes I would, like gravitate towards a woman because she has long hair. But then I sit down with her and I found out that Maria Elena, she's a documentarian. Like she's actually like this super amazing, tough woman because she's super small. I don't think you can tell it from the picture, but she's actually quite small. But she goes into the jungle for months. She makes documentaries of like indigenous people living in super remote areas. She's an activist, of course, feminist. She's there at every women's protests, recording. So she's an amazing, actually, image maker. And this was the first time that she was going to be in front of the camera. And she was hesitant in the beginning. But to me, it's very important to build intimacy and to build comfort. Because I struggle so much being on the other side, like being in front of a camera, I tried for my subject to feel comfortable. And in the beginning, she wasn't sure she wanted to unbraid her hair because she always wears it on a braid. But as the shoot went on, and as she realized that it wasn't maybe this scary thing that she thought, she let her hair down. In the end, like we even did some pictures with a little bit of nudity, with a little bit of play. But it's always in this very small environment. Like it's me and my mom and my camera, natural light. I like working in that way because it easily builds this comfort that I look for. But then again, like look at her and that strength. You cannot make it up. Like that strength is within her. And maybe when you look at this picture, you will not know that she's a documentarian, an activist, all these things. But I think that you see her strength, her regalness. And that's what I was missing in Bolivian depictions of women, like this beauty, this power. And then I have these other images in the book that I like to, so I like to go from, like a real woman, like in the flesh, with all this strength, to these effigies, these plaster effigies of, say, the Virgin Mary. And here, there's always, I think, that's why I want to get philosophical, because I think a lot of metaphorically when I make work. So here we have the Virgin, and I thought I did want to, because I am also criticizing our society, I wanted to talk about things like violence, because it's a big thing in Bolivia, unfortunately, violence against women. But I didn't want to make violent images. I didn't want to feed into that violence through my imagery. So I wanted to be more subtle. So for example, to me, this image was, it's a little bit, maybe I was thinking like, oh, she's there, she cannot breathe, like maybe there is this idea, this metaphor of like how being the Virgin Mary is like this, it's impossible. So it's like this thing that doesn't allow you to breathe. But it's beautiful because you make images and you make them with an idea in your head, but then people see amazing things. A girl told me about this image. Oh, I love it. I love how she's in this plastic bag, because that's how she preserves her purity. And I thought that was wonderful. And now I say it as well, like it is what preserves her purity. It can also be, like this oppression. And I like, again, the contrast between seeing a real woman and seeing the depiction of this character that we've learned about, that was also, if we go back in history, was also a very big imposition in the whole continent, Catholicism.
I love the contrast between the two. There's a tension between the gaze, and the first image here, your angle is just slightly below. I call it the hero shot. And the reason is because that's how most heroes are actually depicted, with their gaze slightly down. And you look at Mother Mary here, and she's looking down, and it shows uh, uh, kind of a submissiveness, and
Yes.
there's a huge contrast between the two, and I love that portrait
And things
and story.
like the skin, like or the eyes, like blue eyes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we see these images as an image of, immaculate femininity and what we have to
yeah,
aspire to, but it's so different from.
yeah.
And
Well, and to hear
uh,
your like interpretation of that image of your mom's friend, she is she just you can see the strength and the respect you have for her. She looks 6 feet tall. She looks like she's 3 meters tall. Like
I
she looks like a
know
hero. You know what I mean? And the way you tell her story, she is to you. And so
she
like
is, she is.
and I think it's masterful, wonderful. I love it.
Thank you so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
much.
Of course.
and and then there is this interplay that I was saying before, like okay, so I'm gonna think about what a modern Virgin Mary would look like,
Mm,
what a modern Mary Magdalene would look like. And it's about reclaiming these things. Like I call this the Andean Virgin, because we know now historical fact. Jesus, the Virgin, although we have these white depictions of them that are popular, and when we think of Jesus, we think of this white man, of Mary, these white women. Where they were born, they were not white. They probably had they uh, looked very differently. But again, like what I'm trying to do with my work in the big picture is like challenge these narratives that are just narratives but have been fed to us as if they were the truth. So this is this is my interpretation of a modern virgin, but she's Andean. Like she looks like the women in my country and not like a European lady. uh, and the same with Mary Magdalene. Like well, we this is I incorporated Andean folklore into my work. So we have a dance in Bolivia that is like the devil's dance. It's called La Diablada. It's actually danced during a religious celebration, but this is La China Supai. China Supai is the lover of the devil, and she's very seductive. An enchantress. Of course, she's a sinner. So I like this idea of bringing elements. This is our interpretation of a devilish woman, the mask that she wears. So I like mixing both of those because, again, like religion, uh, 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 Catholicism is very Eurocentric. So I was thinking like, oh, I think it's very interesting, and I think this is one of the images where you can definitely see my fashion background for sure. Um, like how she's decorated, even I think how it's shot. But I like that interplay. Again, like now I'm not mad. And I think if I'm talking about a spectrum of femininity, why not have a spectrum as well in the format, in the language that I'm employing for these images. And then we have the incorporation of archival images. And I think that it's very important I already told you, like the archival images are from my own family album. So although I am not present there, as there are no images of me, there are images of my family, and I think that's also my way of very literally inserting myself in the conversation. Um, this is my grandma actually during doing her first communion. This is what I was telling you. I was fascinated with the materiality. Like I loved how you can see this texture in the image, and I put a dead bird in the middle. In the beginning, my mom was like, "Oh my God, Marisol, I don't know what you're doing," and now I'm gonna show you a picture later on. Like for example, she calls it the phallus. So my mom, like in the beginning, she was hesitant, but at the end, she was like in, and she understood what I was doing and where I was going. And like for example, putting a dead bird here, to me, it's like symbolic of, you're accepting your first communion, you are accepting God into your heart. But what does that mean? To me, that's also like a loss of innocence. That's also like the death of your own, like if now you're going to be subservient to God, it's like you're giving away your power somehow. So yes, I take these images of my family album and I intervene them as my way of like, countering, challenging my own history, commenting on it. And then I like this interplay again. When we were thinking about the book, my editor was saying like, oh, I think we can start with like the more colonial images, and we can start with like this archival material, historic things, and then move towards the contemporary moment. And I was like, no, I want the temporalities to be mixed. I don't want to think about time as a straight line or as something that happens chronologically. There is even like this belief in Andean culture that time is circular more than a straight line. So to me, it was very important. The same way that you see like a real woman with an effigy, and you can and you can see the difference. I also wanted to see how this image speaks or enters a dialogue with this image, and I think, and I like to play with these things. I always situate these images close by, because you have a dead bird and she has like a gun. So did she kill the bird? What does it mean?
This one
Yes.
is what got my attention. This one right here. I was just it's a very powerful image. And I wanted to understand what you were thinking almost instantly. I
Yes.
was just, because there's flowers worn as kind of a hat or headpiece, and
Yes.
this very long gun. That's a very strong. I think it's a type of shotgun. It's
Yes, it's like yes,
yeah,
and
but it's a
this is
yeah. Go ahead.
uh, no, no, no. Let I can explain the image, but I don't know if you have like something specific that you wanted to ask about this image. But I
No,
will
no,
explain
no.
to
I want to
you.
get in your head. That's why I'm
Okay.
asking about it, because it's one of those that you just mark and circle and go, wow, and this was one of those portraits for me. And so and then she's wearing white, almost like it's a veil, like there's a lot
Yes,
going on here, and I want you to unpack it for me. And so yeah, let's go ahead with this one.
perfect. So the this is this is an image that well, I love it because this has become, I call it my bestseller image, because it's the image that whenever the project gets picked up, it's the image that people use, and I understand. But as the person who makes it, it's always, to me, for the first time, it's very interesting to see what people gravitate towards, and I completely understand. But what people like to know, because this is probably my most reproduced image, is she's my neighbor. She lives in the floor above where I live in Bolivia. That's how I knew her. But her name is Vanessa. Vanessa is my neighbor. She, I, I thought she was like, I ran into her in the elevator, and I just thought like, wow, she's strikingly beautiful, and I loved her skin, and I loved her. She's very sweet, which I don't think you can tell from this picture, because she was in character, but she's very sweet. And I just thought that she was absolutely beautiful. And because she was my neighbor, I thought that it was going to be easier to, like say to her, oh, can you come for a coffee downstairs? I have this project. I want to tell you about it. And for her, I had a very specific idea. There is an Incan goddess, Incan divinity called Mama Kila. She is the she's the moon, the sister of the sun, and she is regarded as the protector of women. She's also like the goddess of the menstruation, but she's the protector of women. And again, the same way that I'm going through religion, and the same way that I'm saying, like, okay, not all, we don't have just one way of looking at things. Like, I'm incorporating, these Incan mythologies as well. Like, yes, I'm going to give you the Virgin, but I'm also going to give you Incan deities. So to me, this was, again, I wanted to make this picture. It was really important to me because there is a lot of violence against women in my country, like a lot. Like, we're one of the countries with the most violence against women in the whole of Latin America, which is a lot to say because it's still a very macho continent. And what I was telling you before, I did want to comment on this, but I didn't want to do it either in a crass way or in a very, I don't know, like I wanted to talk about it, but in a more subtle way. So what I was imagining with her was, to me, this is my way of saying, in Bolivia, we have to defend ourselves. The law is not helping us. The government is not helping us. Society is really not helping us. So justice, protection, we have to take it upon ourselves. Like, it is our responsibility at the end of the day. And although I don't condone violence, I thought that this was a very, like, straight way of saying it. Like, and she gives it to you with the eyes, like, if you cross me, if you hurt me, if you hurt my sisters, I'm gonna go after you. Like, I'm taking this into my own hands. But because it's a woman, I also didn't want to take away from this more traditional form of femininity. So I wanted this contrast to be there. The gun, which is super masculine. You've mentioned, like, this one, which is especially phallic, I would say, because it's so long. But I wanted to dress her in these very traditionally feminine clothes, and very delicate. And something that I really like is that she's wearing my mom's dressing gown, and the firearm belongs to my dad. So she's actually wearing something that belongs to my mom, something that belongs to my dad. And the headpiece that we have her wear is actually a headpiece that women in Tarija, which is another city in my country, they wear these, the exact same ones for Easter celebrations. So women wear these to celebrate Jesus. So I thought it was going to be, again, for me, it's about hybridation, about syncretism. So I thought it was going to be interesting to have her wear like a traditionally Catholic headpiece, but interpret an Incan goddess. And the most beautiful thing, which makes me understand that, the truth about any artistic piece is in the piece, not in the person that made it, is that people call it the bride. So many people have referred to this image as the bride. Now, even I do it sometimes because why not? Kill Bill, like a murderous bride. Love it. Love the concept. But I think it's because of the veil and because she's wearing white. But I love it. I never thought about that. And if you think about her as a bride, it also opens up to a new layer of meaning, it takes you somewhere else. And I simply love it. And I like that people gravitate towards this image because, I mean, Vanessa, I think she was there. I told you already, she's such a sweet person. But here, I think that when you see her, you're like, yes, I'm definitely not making her angry. I'm definitely not gonna cross her path.
Well, and
so that's the story behind
you
the
talk
image.
about this. Yeah, I'm sorry to jump on you,
No,
talk over you here,
I
but
was done. I was done.
oh, okay. But what I was gonna say is that this is your neighbor, okay, and you're able
Oh,
to, and you're telling me that she's a sweet natured person, but you're
yeah.
able to pull this kind of gaze out of her. Like, are you? How do you? How do you get that out of someone that
Oh,
doesn't I'm sure she doesn't have experience with photo shoots, right?
mm,
How do you pull
yes.
that out of people? How do you get your vision across with people that aren't necessarily like professional models per se or actors, you know?
I think that first of all, I think that it's very important if you have the time, because I also understand that sometimes, you do a portrait in the street of someone and you don't really have the time. But it goes back to building a relationship with that person.
Yeah.
I invited Vanessa over. We had a coffee. I told her what I was doing. She already knew that she was embodying this goddess. She knew like that I wanted that mix between strength and vulnerability, because I also think that vulnerability is a strength.
Yeah.
Um, and this is a trick that I'm super happy. Like, I hope it helps. uh, Most of the times I work with non-models. And what I found that really works for me is having these non-models embody a character.
Mm.
Because I think if all you do is say like, oh, stand like this or go like this, if you only give instructions on how to pose or the gestures that you're looking for, to me, it's not as effective as explaining to someone a character, because you said it yourself. She's not an actress, but I think that it's easier. Again, as someone who doesn't like to be in front of the camera, if I am not Marisol and suddenly I am a queen or suddenly I am an old lady, it's even easier for me because you feel, first of all, a little bit less vulnerable because you're embodying a character. And it's an easier cue than asking someone to pose in a certain way or to imitate a reference that you have. So with her, it was, like, I don't remember exactly what I would say, but I would be like, you are shooting down the patriarchy, like you're this goddess. And I'm very, very expressive when I work. Like,
Sure.
sometimes I'm always shooting, like very seriously, but they burst into laughter because I'm like, yes, you're giving me everything I want. And I think that also helps because um, if the person is not a model, they're always expecting, they want to know it was what they're doing good. It's not. So I found out that talking while you're doing the photos really works, and embodying a character really works, because there you have something to grasp onto, so yeah, shoot the patriarchy, like, don't let them in. And so it's easier to get into that mood, and it works as a charm if you've had the chance to meet the person previously. I mean, we went all the way to the countryside to do the shoot, so we also had the opportunity to chat in the car. She got to know my mom, so we were in this very intimate space where you can play a character and you don't feel ridiculous, and you just take the cue. And I and
Okay.
and I, and I have yeah, and hopefully this is a trick that people can, practical thing that people can try to see if it works for them. But yeah, so it's about, to me, again, it's about uh, criticizing these stages of femininity, or of womanhood that we go through, like the famous quinceañera. um, it's also, oh, this is the the image that I was saying that my mom calls the phallus, which I love. That means that she spent a lot of time with me, um, and it's my way. This besides the portraits, doing still lives or doing landscapes like the cave at the beginning. It's also a way of bringing little metaphors, like this softness. Again, to me, it's like a fallen phallus. The softness. Again, this is archival. This is my mom in her first communion. Um, and I thought there was something very powerful about, even like, when you make an image into a negative, you invert it. So
Yeah.
I even thought that this thing of inversion made a lot of sense. And as my mom said, you transform me into a demon. And I was like, yes. So I like how it went from being something very angelical to having this dark undertone, this dark side, no, this inversion, because that's what I'm doing at the end with the archival images. Then there's a lot of, I allude a lot to the Bible, because of course, if I'm talking about Catholicism, what I did was like reappropriate the imagery, but to actually criticize to criticize it. So this one is the burning bush, because whenever God appears in the Bible and speaks directly, for example, to Moses, he appears as a burning bush. And I like this idea of like, what happens if God is talking, but no one is listening? So there is these interpretations, or like when God is gone. So I pair it with this image. This is La Dolorosa. There is, there are these images, effigies that they make of virgins crying with her heart, with blades going through it. It's so dramatic. I love the dramatism of Catholicism. Fashion loves the dramatism, but it's about bringing these elements, and it's about, again, to me, it was very important to show Bolivian faces. We have this beauty that is very unique to us as well. And I think that it's super important that as a whole, we start to understand beauty as again, this spectrum, and not just these Eurocentric heteronormative ideas that have been sort of like the rule for so long. And then there's just like little elements that, for example, I wanted to comment on how, like, I think this idea of being a virgin is like so outdated. So I took this picture in a antique store. I put her, a person asked me if it was a museum, works the same. Like I wanted to place her I wanted to put a virgin in a place where you only find outdated old things. It's still around, but it's like outdated. And there, I think you can see the fashion, because she's wearing like combat boots. So it's always about mixing and matching, like the past, the present, something more traditional with something more contemporary. Again, this reflection, like what does a modern Bolivian virgin look like? What does a Mary Magdalene look like? And for me, this is even political, because I believe that trans women are women. I know that even within feminism, we are split, unfortunately, on these issues. And I was thinking, like, a trans woman is definitely a Magdalene of our times. She's fighting to be even considered a legitimate part of society. She's many times like an outcast. So this is a lot of reflecting, on my heritage, on my identity. I love this play, like putting a trans woman next to a nun, next to an old photo of an old girls' Catholic school. I like this friction of confronting you, because all these women, even this very severe-looking nun, like her sense of femininity is just as valid as this trans woman. But I think there is something when you bring these images together, or this image, which is very, again, that's why I call my work docufiction. I am talking about the oppression of women, but I like to produce images like this that are, like a complete construction, a complete fiction. But I am trying to talk about something real. Here it was about how, as women, we can also be very masculine. So I'm taking this element, the wool, which is very traditionally masculine, and have her wear it, Again, the man as the head of the household, we say that a lot. But in Latin American culture, men are very absent figures. So the same way that I saw men torn off from my family album, I did the same. It's less violent because I did it digitally, but it's my way of saying, like we call the man the head of the household when he's really sometimes not even there. And I loved in this picture in particularly, I loved how miserable she looks. I mean, they back then they didn't take a lot of pictures, so this was like her only wedding picture, and she doesn't look very happy. So it was a lot of fun selecting the images as well. And then again, like it was important. This is a documentary image. I think because of how it's shot, it looks fictional or mythological, but actually I took this during a procession, during a religious procession, and these women dance on the street. But it's, again, I like that some people look at my images and interpret some as, very documentary when they are constructed, and they look at constructed images and cannot and think they're documentary. And for now, there are more images, but I will close with this one so that we can look at the others. And yeah, and going back, to me, it was important to show the diversity, not only with like different ethnic groups and things, but also with age. Because again, like when I talk about the sexist imagery, of course, it's also only, it seems like society only values women when they're young, and they're forgotten or tossed aside when they are older. So it was important for me to try to be as diverse as possible with the women that I was depicting, and to make them. The last thing that I will say is like, I think that there is, to me, the gaze is very important, and most of my pictures, the women are looking straight to the audience. And for this work in particular, I think it's very important because, I mean, you can see it in her. Her name is Carmen. She's looking at you and almost like expecting, posing a question, challenging you. And I think it's really important because at the end of the day, I am talking about the oppression of women, but through these very strong, resilient women who never put themselves as the victims. So I like that strength. I like that piercing gaze to, like, how women have been looked at for so long. I wanted my women to return that gaze and be like, I am the one looking at you. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there so that we have enough time.
Of course. So just reflecting on this before we go to the next place, I always like to ask this question: is you put together this series, I can tell your focus. I can see, I think we as an audience got to see kind of how you constructed these images and your intention behind them. When somebody looks at this body of work, what do you want them to take away? What are you trying to say?